Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are finally going to be taking a more in-depth look at QoR Watercolors. Early on in the channel, which was nearly a year ago, I received a sampler of QoR Watercolors with an online order, and I will put a link to that early impressions video in the upper right hand corner here on an iCard, so you can go ahead and take a look at that video if you'd like. I did a little mini swatch out review of them and had some fun, but I hadn't really gotten a chance to use them much after that. These colors that we're taking a look at today are actually from Coloring Karia, who you all probably know from my other videos, and she very kindly sent me her little stash to pour some of my own samples before returning them back to her. They've been sitting in their pans a little bit neglected for the last several months while I've been trying them out here or there, and I'm finally ready to give you a review on them. Before I get into the details about these paints, I just want to give you a quick note on what I'm doing here in the video. I'm making a color mixing chart by mixing every color with every other color. The pure paints from the pans are located on the diagonal from the upper left to the bottom right, and then there are two squares for every unique color combination, so one on top of that line and one on the bottom side of that line. One of them will have more of one pigment and the other one has more of the other pigment, and I did do a whole video on this, so I'll put another iCard up in the corner above so that you can go ahead and find that video so you can make your own mixing charts if you haven't already. Alrighty, so QoR's watercolor parent company is actually Golden, who is extremely well known for their acrylic paints. Their watercolors are a newer line, and they refer to them as modern watercolors, claiming that they retain the best qualities of traditional watercolors while, quote, expanding the range and versatility of each color, end quote. They are also using a new binder called Aquazol instead of gum arabic, which is traditionally used for watercolors, and this binder is exclusive to QoR. They say that their binder provides more pigment in every brushstroke that is unmatched in the history of watercolors. Their words, not mine, and it's a pretty massive claim. They also say that the binder provides greater resistance to cracking and flaking when you're using it in thicker applications if you want to go down that path. They have 83 colors in their line, and each and every one of them is gorgeously cataloged on their website. They are the only company that I've ever seen that provides such extensive swatches that undergo a wide variety of opacity, flow, layering, and other application tests. There's also something else available on their website that I've never seen before, and that is, rather than a dot chart, you can actually purchase a complete mini binder full of every one of the swatches that they have that are hand painted and labeled with complete pigment information. Now, this video is in no way sponsored by them. I didn't even receive these paints directly through them, but I am really impressed with these resources that they offer, and I think very highly of them for being able to provide that to their customers who want them. So what about the paints? There's a lot of big claims, and you've got to be wondering if they hold up to all of them. Well, I will fully agree that their colors are beautifully vibrant, and they do, from the limited range of colors that I've tried, seem to have a smaller drying shift than many other watercolors that I've used. The drying shift is when they go from their super saturated and dark colors to when they dry, they tend to lighten and lessen in intensity, and there seems to be less of that with the QoRs. They re-wet very well, and despite other claims that I've heard amongst the community that the dried pans don't re-wet or flow as well as they do straight from the tube, or they're not as vibrant as they are from the tube, I didn't really find this to be an issue. I painted swatches the day I poured the pans with fresh pigment that was still wet from the tube, and you can see that here on the top. And again, for this video, I painted another set of swatches months later, and there is basically little to no difference in the intensity of colors. So again, I didn't find this issue to be a factor at all. All of that being said, I've got to say that I think these paints are a little bit overpriced when you compare them tube by tube to other brands of paint. I have no idea how much more they cost to produce using their exclusive binders over gum arabic, and I totally appreciate the extensive resources, but as a struggling artist, when I'm in a store comparing a tube of, say, Daniel Smith to a tube of QoR, and the Daniel Smith is actually cheaper per milliliter, I just don't have the luxury of splurging for the QoR paints. Now, it is important to note that the QoR tubes are only 11 milliliters, whereas the industry standard is pretty much 15. So you are getting 4 milliliters less per tube, and you do need to consider that when you are looking at the prices. As an example, their Series 1 paint, so that's the entry point for their cheapest paints that they produce, they're relatively comparable with Daniel Smith. Daniel Smith is 67 cents per milliliter on Blick.com, and the QoRs are 74 cents. However, if we look at one of the more expensive pigments like Cobalt Teal, the QoR tube of 11 milliliters is actually 20 cents more expensive than the 15 milliliter tube of Daniel Smith, and you're getting 4 milliliters less paint. So that is something to consider. I think that the best way to actually purchase these instead of tube by tube, if you're trying to do it affordably, is in their introductory kits, which they have several of, and to be fair, Daniel Smith doesn't offer these. QoR has a variety of 6 color sets, a 12 color set, and a 24 color set, all of which contain 5 milliliter tubes that average between $2.90 to $3.50 a piece, depending on which set you get. Just for reference, the colors that Karia sent me that are in the swatch chart that we did before included most of the colors from the High Chroma Set, which is one of the 6 color sets. However, I have a nickel azo yellow instead of a quinacridone gold, and then there's also 3 other tubes that she had that were not in an original kit. I'll link several of the kit offerings in the description below if you want to check out the different color options that are available. All in all, whether or not you should purchase QoRs over another brand of paint will come down to the specific colors and how you like them compared to other brands. So let's go ahead and do our swatch comparisons. The first 2 colors are actually fairly close to each other in this selection of paint that I have. We've got a nickel azo yellow, which is PY150. It's a really beautiful golden yellow, and it's very similar to the Daniel Smith variety, although it's probably a little bit warmer. And then we also have the green gold, which is PY129, which is very comparable again to Daniel Smith's rich green gold. Just keep in mind Daniel Smith's green gold is a different pigment. So those colors are pretty comparable, with the QoRs maybe having a slight edge on the saturation and vibrancy. The next color is Transparent Pyro Orange from P071, and this color is actually drastically different than Daniel Smith's variety, which is a very deep, almost red color. The Daniel Smith variety is fantastic for mixing blacks, and I don't have as much experience using QoR's version, but it is noted that it's a lot closer to the Azo Orange than it is to the Transparent Pyro Orange. The next color is probably actually my favorite color in the whole selection that I have, and it's Quinacridone Magenta Pr122, and the QoR's version is hands down the most gorgeous version of this paint that I've ever seen. It is so beautiful, so saturated, so vibrant, it layers beautifully, it is easily 2 or 3 times as dark as the Lucas variety, and I definitely highly recommend this pigment over others. Then we have the Dioxazine Purple or Dioxazine Violet, which it is very comparable to the mg version, which is previously the most pigmented version I had used before. It remains really vibrant though, whereas mg is a bit darker in value. There seems to be a bit more of the purple color in the QoR version. Next up we have Ultramarine Blue, PB29. It is very similar in color to all of the other Ultramarine Blues because they're all pretty much the same. However, QoR's does granulate very, very heavily. Previously the one that I had that was granulating the most was the Rembrandt version, but QoR granulates more than that one even. It's pretty close to the granulation levels of Mission Gold's Ultramarine Deep, but that has an added pigment to it, so it's not the same hue. Then we have Cobalt Teal, which I mentioned in the pricing review. This is a more expensive pigment. It is included in the High Chroma Set, and I have a couple of samples to compare this to. Daniel Smith's version of PG50, the Cobalt Teal, definitely has, it's more green, it has more yellow in it, but then the mg's Cobalt Teal, which is made from PB28, is a little bit more on the blue side, so the QoR's falls right in between. It has a nice granulation that isn't too overbearing, and all in all is a really pretty color if you want to spend the extra money on that brand. Next up we have Quinacridone Gold Deep, which in Daniel Smith is a mixture of 2 different pigments. This one is a single pigment version, P048, which is basically Quinacridone Burnt Orange in most other brands. QoR's version is more orange than the other ones, which are a little bit more on the brown side, but all in all, it's a really beautiful, clean color that glazes just as well as the other QoR colors. Finally, we have raw umber, which is made from PBR7, and it granulates very heavily, just like the Ultramarine does, but it's pretty much the same hue as Ingram's or Mission Gold's Van Dyke Brown. Finally, for this video, I have another little sampler that I found at my local art store recently, and this sampler is different than the one that I got a year ago through my online order, so I wanted to go ahead and swatch it out for you so that you could all see a few more colors. The only color that is duplicated in the set is the Ultramarine. The other 5 are unique to this palette that we haven't seen yet in this video. The sampler includes a warm yellow, a warm red, a very pink cobalt violet, the Ultramarine, an opaque green, and a granulating mid-brown earth tone. In addition to the color swatches, I'm also including a few mixtures and test strips, and you can see here that some of the colors, like the yellow, jump across the page when you put it onto a wet-on-wet application, while others, like the violet, barely move at all. Some of QoR's watercolors have a fingering or veiny type effect that people either seem to really love or hate, and the granulating colors are incredibly textural, so whether or not you like these effects is going to be entirely personal preference. In this little sampler, I also included a tiny little landscape so that you can see how the paints work together in this mini demo. The paper, by the way, if it remained constant with the paper from the last sampler, it's Arches cold press. It feels the same, so I don't think it would be different. And I also pulled out a scrap of Canson XL so you can see how differently they react on different types of paper, because there is quite a difference in the way that the paper absorbs the color or moves around the textures of the paint. If you haven't already seen my huge watercolor paper comparison video, again, I'll put an iCard up in that right-hand corner so you can go ahead and check that video out as well. So I hope that you enjoyed this look at QoR Watercolors today, and as a little bonus to those of you who are still watching all the way through the end and or checking the description, I do have a second sampler card available that I'm going to be giving away. To enter the giveaway, please leave me a comment below and be sure to like this video. I will draw a winner at random by Tuesday, August 29th and include it in the video on the channel that will air that day. The mini giveaway is available for all of my viewers regardless of where you live, so feel free to enter even if you're an international viewer. Full details are in the description, and again, I hope you enjoy this little mini giveaway. One last thing that I wanted to ask you all about is that there's been some interest, particularly on Instagram, about putting together some dot cards or mini palettes or even some painted out swatch charts for various brands of paint, or selections of my favorite combinations, and or selling pre-cut and lined swatch cards, either the Arches paper or the Canson XL with the Sharpie line across for the opacity test, in my Etsy shop. So let me know if you would have any interest in one of those products, and if so, which ones you'd like to see. Go ahead and let me know in the comments below. Thank you all for liking, commenting, and subscribing as always. Thank you for watching today, and I will see you next time.